I have said it before. I will say it again. I will say it right now. This Baylor basketball team can beat anybody in the country. This is Locked On Baylor postgame.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back. Locked On Baylor postgame. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. I am your host, Cam Stewart. Bears really kind of working Kansas in this one. They take down the number 7 Kansas Jayhawks 82-74. And for most of the game, most of the second half anyway, it didn't feel that close. I mean, this was everything we really had hoped for after that loss at Kansas just under a month ago. It was February 10th or so. We were saying, boy, that was a missed opportunity. Even on the road at Fog Allen, you don't usually say that. Like that was a missed opportunity. We're a better basketball team than those guys, and just wait till they come to the Foster. And it's easy to say that for a couple of weeks, and then they actually come to the Foster, and it's like put up or shut up time. And the Bears put up big time today, man. And it wasn't any kind of fluke. It wasn't just because they shot well from three. It wasn't because Kevin McCullough was out, because he wasn't. He was maybe their best player today. None of those excuses. In fact, we had a good player out. They didn't. And the Bears win it, again, pretty comfortably, and they score 80 on Kansas. 82-74, the final in this one. So much to get to in terms of the standout performers, but the first thing I want to highlight is I've told you guys about the StatCast where it says current trends. You know, Baylor hasn't scored in X amount of time, or they've missed this many shots in a row. And every time I go to it, no matter if it's a good win, a bad loss, a kind of not great loss, but not terrible loss, doesn't matter. Every time I go on there, it's Baylor has missed X amount of shots to end the game, or the other team went on a blanco run. TCU went on an 8-0 run to end the game Monday. Anyway, I say that to say, because it says for Baylor, field goals, 4 of their last 4 to end the game. Like the things that were such a problem even not that long ago, just a couple of games ago, Baylor is figuring it out. And look, there's 2 more regular season games in the Big 12 tournament. They could lose the next 3 before they head into the NCAA tournament. But a week out from the tournament, this is the best I felt about a Baylor team in years. I mean, probably since the 21 team. And that's not a comparison to these 2 teams, but like this feels like the things are clicking and they're coming together at the right time. It's funny. I will bring this up. Last media availability after, I don't remember, it was earlier this week. My pal, friend of the program, Nicole Sheeran from Channel 6, asked Scott Drew, you know, are things clicking at the right time for you guys? You seem to be playing better basketball. And he said something like, well, we just lost 2 games in a row. So I don't know I hope we're not peaking at the right time. But I say that to say, because us as fans were like, we are playing better. We didn't win the game against Houston, but we played pretty well and looked like a team that could beat almost anybody. And the next time you get a real chance to prove that, you know, you go on the road and beat TCU, that's great. But the next chance you really get to prove that is Kansas at home. And they went out there and they did it. They took a team that Wounded Duck is probably putting it a little too far, because they had their full arsenal of players, but struggle on the road and struggle against good teams. And Baylor handled this game. It's not a 20-point victory, but it almost feels like it, because Baylor really kept them at arm's length the whole game. And the guy I got to highlight first is RayJ Dennis. I mean, I'm going to pat myself on the back here for being on the RayJ Dennis train this whole time. And he had a bad game against the Jayhawks last time. The team had 21 turnovers. I think he had like 7 or 8. And he was basically saying that one's on me, because that was the difference in the game last time. Well, all he does today is shoot 7 of 8 from the floor, 19 points, 10 assists, 3 turnovers. That's it. And down the stretch, he actually did what he was trying to do earlier in the conference schedule and couldn't get done. And that was putting the team, hey, guys, get on my back. I've got us from here. Because every time Kansas got it even a little close, 2-possession game, 4 points, 5 points, I'm sitting up there in the stands and I'm thinking Baylor needs a basket. And every time I said that, RayJ Dennis created one. And usually creating his own shot off the dribble. I hope you were watching Jay Williams. We saw 3 guys for Baylor create off the dribble today. At worst, 3 guys. And I'm talking about RayJ Dennis with his 19, Jayden Nunn with his 18, also shooting 7 of 8 from the floor. And another guy who can create off the dribble, by the way, Yves freaking Missi, who outplayed Hunter Dickinson again. Look past the stats. Watch the game. 17 and 5 for him. Dickinson, man, obviously a talented player, but I have not ever seen someone of his caliber just cash in on first halves like he does. So he ends the game with 20 points and 9 of 12 from the floor, 20 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists. Like, that's a pretty darn good game. But if you watch the game, and if you're a Kansas fan, this has got to be infuriating. He gets 12 in the first half, and, he scores 5 in the last 2 minutes. One of them was a 3 to get them within 6 or something, and 2 more were free throws. So I'm like, where is he going in between? What is he doing? Why is he on a milk carton almost the entire second half until basically the game is over? I mean, you took him out of the game, and this happens a lot with him. Boy, his personal stats are what Brad Brownell thinks the Big 12 is doing with the non-conference schedule. Like, he's just padding them in the first half. And then he goes missing, creates a couple more at the end, so that if you're a Kansas fan, you're thinking, oh, well, he did have 20 and 6. He put in a good shift today. But he didn't, man. He didn't help you when the game was getting away. He was nowhere to be found when the game was slipping through your fingers. And Baylor won this game with 12 minutes left and then didn't lose it after that, which they've done a few times this year. They've lost it in those stretches, even when they were winning. Unfortunately, Kansas, with a couple missed shots at the end, goes down to 55% from the floor for the day. And I say that because it's unfortunate, because Baylor ends up shooting better, 56%. But almost the whole game, I'm looking at this, and Kansas is shooting 60% from the floor, like the whole game. And they're down 12 and 10. And I'm like, what is happening? And it's Baylor forcing turnovers, not winning the turnover battle. But how about this? Baylor only had 11 turnovers in this game. They took 10 turnovers back from that first time they played him. That is mind-bogglingly good. Even with how bad it was the first time, it was that good the second time. But Kansas only had 8, so it's not like they're just throwing the ball around. But it's the rebounds. Baylor ends up only being +8 on the rebounding chart, but that was much better if you looked at it in like the under 4 timeout before garbage time. And second chance points got closed at the end, but it ends up being 11-9. How about this? Kansas scored the last 6 second chance points of the game. So it was 11-3. Like that those are big differences in the game. 8 points and however many extra shots that they were getting. And again, Kansas kind of cuts that down in garbage time. But just as good a performance as you can ask for from the Bears today. And back to Jayden Nunn, because I got to give him his flowers. 18 points, also on 7 of 8 shooting. 3 of 3 from beyond the arc. 5 boards. Like, if I had told you that a month and a half ago, you would have thought I was crazy. That Jayden Nunn was going to get 18 and shoot 7 of 8 from the field. And then I told you it's against Kansas. You would have thought I was nuts. But Jayden Nunn does so many things for this team. I look at Jaylen Bridges' stat line, and it's nothing to write home about. 9 points, 5 rebounds, 3 of 10 from the floor ain't that good. But if you watch the game, you would have thought, wow, that's surprising, because there were a couple times early in the second half when Baylor made that run where he was making big plays for them, pulling down big rebounds, making big shots. 1-3 that was in that sequence. Like, he kind of kickstarted it again. So it's another guy where the numbers for him all season have been terrific, but if you watch every game, you're like, this guy has to be all Big 12. Has to be. Jacoby Walter, 11 and 8. That's pretty good for a guy who missed 10 field goals today. And I don't think he took many bad shots. He tried to draw a couple fouls that didn't go his way. Anyway, that's kind of the rundown of the box score there. Kevin McCullough had a good game, led all scorers, but he misses 10 shots. He goes 0 of 5 from 3. He turns it over 3 times. Dickinson also has 20, but I already went over him. So, I mean, Baylor played this perfectly. It wasn't necessarily the zone clinic that I thought it might be. But Kansas did well against the zone last time. I just thought the zone would be a little bit better for Baylor this time out. And it was, but it wasn't like the end-all be-all. Baylor just was the better team today. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought it was funny. They announced with a couple minutes to go that, hey, no one is allowed on the court. Only staff is allowed on the court. Please refrain from coming onto the court. And I'm sitting here thinking, what are we storming the court for? It's fun. I'm not going to say don't do it, but we're better than these guys. What do we need to storm the court for? That's going to flatter them. We're better than Kansas, and we showed it today. Kansas is still a talented team, but these are the problems they've been having all season long. And their problems are unraveling more. Baylor's are getting corrected. And I thought it was going to be 75-66. I was flattering Kansas a bit because I should have known Baylor was going to go over 80 on the Jayhawks today. Just fantastic, fantastic stuff. And by the way, before I get into the comments, I got asked after the Iowa State game, what was the best atmosphere you've ever had for Baylor basketball? And I said, it's kind of tough. I remember that Kansas game in 2017, that Iowa State game that we were talking about was right up there. This was it. This was it today. There are still people who need to buy white Baylor t-shirts, but that was a pretty darn good whiteout. The towels were awesome. Bring more of those for the next game against Texas, the last home game. That place was jumping all day long. And when they made that initial run that kind of put them away, I have it in my notes here. It was a 7-0, which I believe became a 9-0 run to make it 51-53-46 with 13 minutes left. I say 7-0. So they go on a 7-0 run to make it 51-46 because then there was a timeout with 13 minutes left. And the place was just going berserk. It was a Jaylen Bridges corner 3. It was a Jayden Nunn drive to the basket. It was an Yves Missi block, like 12, 15 feet out from the basket that he blocked and then caught. And then another Jayden Nunn layup when I was telling him to pass it the whole time. The place was up for grabs. I have never heard a Baylor basketball arena that loud. It's giving me goosebumps. I'm almost getting emotional talking about it. And I was almost getting emotional at the end of the game. That I was just, because I was telling my girlfriend who was there with me, she's not a huge sports fan. She didn't go to Baylor undergrad. And I was like, I would have killed for Baylor to beat Kansas as an undergrad. They did it once, but I was studying abroad, so I missed it. And I was like, I just would have killed to have this moment. And now that's 4 in a row at home against the Jayhawks. And I did get to be in the arena last year. It's just a awesome feeling. And I mean that in the truest sense of the word, full of awe that this is where we are. That these two teams that played today at the Foster Pavilion are the 2 best college basketball programs of the last 5 years. And if you look at the numbers, the other teams aren't even really close. Houston and Gonzaga get great shouts. They're the next 2 for sure. But these are the 2 premier college basketball programs of this short college generation of these 4 or 5 years. These are the 2 best. And I would have thought you were mental when I was a student, which wasn't that long ago. If you had told me that. Makai Mason at the game, one of my all-time favorites. I just wonder if you had told him that in 1819, hey, when you come back to see the Bears in 5 years from now, they're going to have a national championship banner up there and they're going to be playing Kansas. And those are going to be the 2 best teams in college basketball since you've left. It's just a great day to look back on that, bask in this victory, but to take that all in. That was fantastic. That was fantastic. To the comments, ZS Tuthill. Oh, I said that right. Z Studhill. I don't know. Missi had his way in the paint. Most of the game he did. Hunter Dickinson got some baskets in the first half that he was just taller than people, which isn't a knock on him. But Yves had him in a blender a few times. including that second basket that he had, where he had all kinds of moves on Dickinson, just backed him down and went up and under him. He had no shot. But what would have been the loudest reaction I think I've ever heard for Baylor basketball was the first basket of the game, but I don't think everyone realized that Yves Missi actually dunked it. He went in on these guys, and it looked like it had no shot because he was so far out. He threw it down, and it was loud, but I think people were like, "Oh my, did that really just happen?" Like they couldn't even fathom that had happened. But Scotty B with the great stats he always does. Kansas, the most conference losses under Bill Self. Wow. Most conference losses Kansas has had since 88, 89. Yeah, Roy Williams' first season. Yeah, Larry Brown and Danny Manning won the national championship for them the year before. And wow, that's fascinating, bro. Taylor Swift wasn't even born the last time they had this many conference losses. I'm telling you, man. And I don't want it to be like Kansas is a poverty team. They kind of are. Because they still have talent. And like, you wouldn't be surprised if that's an Elite Eight team, but they are not the Kansas of even a couple years ago, obviously national champions 2 years ago. This is not a patented Bill Self Kansas team. But the last time I said that was 2021. And the next year they won the national championship. But with the star power they have, this should be a much better Kansas team. I'm sorry. You add what was arguably the best player in the country last year, Hunter Dickinson, to a fantastic team already. That they've got to be better than that, and they are just not. They're just not. And Scotty B is also praying that Iowa State loses 2 of the next 3. Would that put us, Scotty? Put that in the comments. Would that put us in? Would that give us a chance at the Big 12 regular season, or would that just kind of solidify our top 4? Because Kansas will probably lose at Houston next week. Daniel asks, how did you feel about the reffing? Bill Self was definitely holding in a lot of non-Baylor friendly words. I thought the officiating was fine. Yeah, there was a couple of calls that you're like, huh, what? But that's Big 12. That's college basketball, really. There was one where Jayden Nunn got, I mean, I guess that would be considered a tackle by the definition. The guy had both hands around him. I don't remember who it was, if it was Adams or Jackson or whomever, but had 2 hands around him and like basically pulls Jayden Nunn down before he goes up for a layup, and they called Nunn for a travel. I thought that was ridiculous. I only saw one replay on this next one, so I might be wrong, but the goaltending that they upheld, they reviewed in a timeout and upheld, that looked like a block in that one replay I saw, but I didn't get the best angle at it. So I thought the refereeing was fine. Bill was definitely upset. I thought it was pretty even both ways. The only thing that I didn't like, and this is, again, something that happens in college basketball all the time, unfortunately, is these late whistles, man. Like, we're waiting for guys to hit shots, waiting to see if the other team will come down for a rebound, and then blowing the whistle. That's what I hate more than anything. And there was a lot of that today, but I think that was fine. Yes, more towels. Yes, I'm talking more towels every game. Yes. I love rally towels. I pick up all the loose ones every time. So I would say, bang, bring on more of those. Okay, Scotty's updated me. If Iowa State loses 2 of the next 3 and Baylor wins out, then Baylor could be second in the Big 12. Okay. I don't know what Iowa State's schedule is, but if they lose 2, and look, I don't fancy Kansas to go in and beat Houston. Because I think Houston's that good a home team. I think Kansas is that bad a road team, but they have beaten them this year. So that could happen as well and could get you a little bit closer. Anyway, Daniel says, my favorite part was El Marco. Okay, it was El Marco Jackson. Yes. Tackling 2 different Baylor players and tried to sell a flop. That was stupid. I can't say enough about Baylor's offense today, really, because they've been good all season long offensively. That's not any news flash, but they played offense down the stretch today as well as any game this season. I mean, again, I'll bring it back to RayJ creating his own shot. I mean, that was just terrific. He was finishing in the paint. I mean, we've said this all season long. He's as good as any point guard, maybe in the country, at finishing or creating in the paint. And he put those all on display today. There was a play specifically in the second half. I know you guys love when I break down these plays, that I was just shivering. It was so good. It was an inbound play. RayJ inbounded it to Missi, got it back right away on basically the baseline, and they both curl towards the basket. And Dickinson does not have positioning on Missi, so it's easy. It's either a lob to Missi or a RayJ layup, basically floater, but you can't guard both. And they couldn't. And RayJ looks at the lob. The guy sinks towards Missi because he knows it's coming. Bang, floater, basically a layup. Another one. Like, he is so good at dissecting a defense. That's Kansas's strength, by the way. They're still a good defensive team. I think they're fourth in the Big 12, which has 2 of the top 5 teams in the country in defense. Like, this is still a solid defensive team, but RayJ picked them apart, and he's been doing that all season long. But to see it against a good defense and to have those efficiency numbers, 10 assists to 3 turnovers, that was just fantastic to watch today. Just awesome. And I mean, I just get so amazed at how smart Dennis is on the court, how smart Yves Missi is on the court. Really, all of these guys. No one's out there making boneheaded plays anymore. Like, they're used to the Big 12. They're used to the environments that come with it, and they're playing really good basketball. Really good basketball. Trying to see if there was anything else from my notes that is worth bringing up. I did think it was great that Baylor didn't have their first turnover till just under 11 minutes remaining in the first half. That was a good sign. They did, I think they were even with Kansas at the break, though, so not great. That low screen was really killing them in the first half. Kansas was running that where they just had too many athletic bigs down there, and Baylor made the adjustment. That was not a factor in the second half. I did make a note that Baylor was up 13 with 8.5 minutes left, and the DJ started playing. DJ Elusive, shout out, was playing. What was it? Carry On My Wayward Son by Kansas, and I was like, oh boy, let's hope this doesn't prove to be bad juju. Which, by the way, we basically had. If you were at the game, you know this. There was basically a sick 'em Jesus in the pregame prayer. It said "Sick 'em Bears in Jesus' name." Like, that was really close to our sick 'em Jesus. And I was like, oh boy, this thing's over. We're about to get our heart broken. And it didn't happen. So maybe that exercised the sick 'em Jesus demons. I sure hope so. Because those 2 teams that Baylor could not beat when I was in college, Oklahoma in football, Kansas in basketball, back-to-back wins against OU. See you later. See you never. And then 4 wins in a row at home against Kansas. Just terrific stuff. And I got to get to this comment from McMuffin, and I want to end with this because he's absolutely right. This team can win the whole thing. They can. That's not saying they're going to. That's not saying, Final Four or bust even. Because they can, they could run into a 1 seed and lose in the Elite 8. But this team is that good. And not a lot of people are going to be paying attention to that because they were ranked 15th, and they'll be back in the top 10 this week, for better or for worse. But they can absolutely do that. They have the makeup of that. I think their starting 5, the way they're playing right now, is damn near a perfect starting 5. And when you have Langston Love back, which is hopefully before the tournament, you have the best 6th man in the conference, who won't win the award because he's missed time, but he absolutely was the best 6th man in the conference. That's a dangerous basketball team going down the stretch. So, Mick, you're absolutely right. And whether it happens or not, this team can absolutely win the whole damn thing. Let me know what you think about that statement down in the comments below. We'll have more on this game on Monday's show. We'll also be looking ahead to Monday night's matchup. So another quick turnaround, NCAA tournament turnaround, to take on the Texas Longhorns at the Foster Pavilion for one last rodeo. Students, don't go on your spring break just yet. You will have plenty of time, and you'll have more to come. Trust me. Let's pack this place out and let's give them one more horns down going out the door, baby, and keep this thing rolling because there's no excuses to lose to them a second time. Anyway, we'll see you Monday. Thanks for joining for another Locked On Baylor postgame. We'll be back in just a flash with your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.